My name's Logan, and I live with my wife Amber in a modest two-story house tucked into the damp, evergreen corners of Silverdale, Washington. If you've ever been up here, you know how the fog rolls in off the sound, how the rain never really stops. It just changes personalities. And tonight, it was one of those steady drizzles that taps the windows like an anxious finger. A quiet sort of night, heavy with stillness. The kind that usually makes me feel at peace. But not tonight. Started like any other late Thursday. I'd been home since 6, finished leftovers from the night before, threw on a hoodie, and settled into my usual spot in the den with a can of Rainier and a documentary playing in the background. Amber texted around 8, saying her agency's internal network had gone down, and they were figuring it out. She didn't say she was coming home late. She didn't say anything else. Just one short message. Might have to shift to remote. No emojis. No love you. No be safe. Not like her. By 11:30, I'd brushed my teeth, put on a second pot of decaf, and resigned myself to the couch. The living room lights were dimmed low, just how Amber liked it. Soft lighting makes the brain relax, she always said, citing some study she read 3 years ago. I guess some of her quirks stuck with me longer than I realized. Then the door swung open. I jumped a little, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't expecting it to be that loud. Amber was soaked through, mascara smudged just barely under her eyes, clutching her leather tote like it had tried to escape her. She didn't say hi, didn't smile, didn't even ask why I was still up. She dropped her bag on the counter with a heavy thud, then walked straight to my desk in the corner, where I sometimes work on freelance editing projects, and placed a silver flash drive right next to my mousepad. "Don't touch it," she said, voice low and flat. "It's just reports. Boring stuff." Then she turned, peeled off her coat, and disappeared into the hallway. The bathroom door shut a second later, followed by the soft hiss of the shower turning on. Now look, I'm not the type of guy who snoops. At least I didn't used to be. We've been married for 4 years, and trust has always been our thing. No checking each other's phones, no weird rules about passwords. We didn't need them, or at least I thought we didn't. But something about the way she said it, it got under my skin. That "don't touch it." Like she already knew I might. Like she was counting on it. I turned my head and stared at the flash drive. Small, innocent looking. I must have had dozens just like it over the years. But this one felt radioactive. The shower kept running. I could hear the water echo off the tile walls. Normally she hums in there, soft little tunes usually out of key. But tonight, silence. Just the hiss of the water and the occasional thud as she moved bottles around. My stomach twisted a little. Something about the whole thing felt staged. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the drive again. Amber's job isn't what people think it is. She's not one of those cut-and-paste ad reps you see in movies. Her agency specializes in aggressive digital strategy for mid-tier clients, startups mostly, plus a few corporate leftovers with outdated branding. She handles accounts, coordinates with the design team, and sometimes pitches to investors. She's smart, sharp, and efficient to a fault. I've seen her tear apart a client presentation the morning of a meeting, rebuild it from scratch, and land the contract by lunchtime. Which is why I knew something was wrong. Amber never brings work home. She hates mixing spaces. That's her mantra. Mental boundaries protect mental health. But here she was, dropping a flash drive on my desk like it was just another Tuesday. And the way she said, "Nothing interesting?" It didn't match her eyes. Her eyes told a different story. Glassy, like she was forcing focus. And behind them, something deeper, something spinning. I walked over to the desk, but didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I turned the chair slowly, leaned down, and stared at the thing like it was going to confess if I looked hard enough. Then I looked toward the hallway. The water was still running. And suddenly, a strange memory surfaced. A few weeks ago, she'd come home late around 10. Said she'd grab drinks with a couple coworkers after a long pitch session. I didn't think much of it. I trust her, right? But when she came to bed, she smelled different. Not like perfume. Something unfamiliar. And when I leaned in to kiss her goodnight, She flinched, said she was exhausted, rolled over and was out like a light. The next morning I asked how drinks went. She said it was low-key and that they just talked strategy. No names, no details. I chalked it up to stress. Now I wasn't so sure. The flash drive sat there like a tiny bomb. And I started thinking, what kind of reports get saved on a flash drive in 2025? Everything's in the cloud these days. Dropbox, Notion, even old-school Google Drive. Who still uses flash drives? I reached for it. Then I pulled back. No, not yet. I paced the room a little, rubbed the back of my neck, glanced toward the hallway again. The sound of the water continued, steady, almost too steady. I checked the time. She'd been in there nearly 20 minutes. I walked to the bathroom door, knocked lightly. You okay? I asked, my voice casual. Yeah, she called back. Just trying to decompress. I waited a beat. Long day? She didn't answer at first. Then, something like that. I went back to the living room, but my mind was racing. A strange thought crept in. What if she wanted me to open it? What if this was some kind of test? Or worse, a trap? I sat back down. The drive was still there. I picked it up, just held it. It was warm. Probably from the heat of the room or her hand. But still, it made me uneasy. I didn't plug it in. Instead, I opened my laptop and Googled her agency name. Searched news. Socials. Anything. No mentions of outages. No employee complaints. No remote work policy updates. If their systems had crashed that hard, someone would have said something. But there was nothing. Just silence. The water shut off. I dropped the flash drive back where she'd left it and shut the laptop. A few seconds later, Amber walked back into the room in her robe, towel drying her hair. She didn't look surprised to see me still up. She offered a tired smile. You didn't fall asleep on me? Nah, I said. Was just thinking. She tilted her head. Thinking about what? I forced a smile. How I miss when you used to come home at 6 instead of midnight. That got a chuckle out of her. A soft one. Forced. I know. Sorry. It's been crazy lately. She leaned down and kissed me lightly on the cheek. But it didn't feel like a kiss. It felt like punctuation. An end to a sentence I hadn't read yet. Amber wasn't always like this. There was a time, maybe a year ago, when she'd walk through that same front door and light up the entire room. Her voice would be tired but warm, and she'd lean into me like I was the only anchor holding her down in a chaotic world. Even if her eyes were lined with exhaustion, they still looked at me like I mattered. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. It started with small stuff. Tiny cracks that only became obvious in hindsight. Like how she stopped making fun of my goofy playlists during breakfast. Or how she started saying, I love you without really looking at me. Just tossing it out there the way you say, bless you after a sneeze, automatic but hollow. I told myself it was work. She had just landed a demanding new client, one of those self-important tech bros with too much funding and not enough patience. Amber hated people like that, people who think a pitch deck is a personality, but she took the job anyway. Said it'd be good for her career. Said we could finally start looking at houses closer to Seattle. We had a plan. Or at least, I thought we did. But the longer the contract dragged on, the more Amber disappeared. She started getting up earlier, coming home later. She'd say it was client fire drills or presentation rewrites. And I believed her. I really did. At first. Until the night she said she was going to yoga. Now, don't get me wrong, Amber's always been a fitness junkie. Running, bar, Pilates, whatever was trendy. She once made me take a hot yoga class with her and I almost passed out 10 minutes in. She laughed so hard that night, said I looked like a melting candle. I'd never seen her more alive. But this time was different. She said she was going to a 9 p.m. class at the yoga studio downtown. I remember raising an eyebrow and asking, didn't they stop evening sessions? And she hesitated just for a second before saying they'd reopened a few late-night slots for regulars. Sounded plausible. Until I checked the studio's site an hour later. Still no classes after 7. I didn't confront her that night. I just sat on the couch, holding my phone like it was evidence and wondering if I was becoming that guy. The paranoid husband. The one who starts checking calendars and emails, who second-guesses every text message. I didn't want to be him. I hated that guy. But the thing is, you don't become him overnight. You get chipped away, little by the kind of inconsistencies that pile up like junk mail. You tell yourself you're overreacting. You rationalize. You excuse. Until you realize you've been trying to hold together a story that doesn't make sense anymore. Another red flag? Her phone. Amber used to leave it lying around the house like it was an extension of her coffee mug. Half the time I had to remind her where she put it. She never cared if I glanced at her screen or answered a call when her hands were full. We were us. What was there to hide? But a few months ago that changed. She started keeping it on airplane mode whenever she was home. Said it helped her focus and declutter her mind. But the timing was always suspicious. Right when she got back or when she was about to jump in the shower. And when it wasn't on airplane mode, it was face down on the nightstand, or clutched in her hand like it might slip away. I once asked her why she suddenly hated notifications so much, and she shrugged. It's just noise, she said. You should try it. Then there was the lingerie. Now, let me be clear. Amber's always had a sharp eye for style. She doesn't dress to impress. She dresses to int asterisk mid-8. But her lingerie was different. It used to be us, shared. Something we laughed about, teased over, built memories around. I knew every piece she owned. Every lace trim, every silk strap. It was familiar. Then one day, she walked out of the bedroom in a midnight blue set I'd never seen before. Elegant, expensive-looking, and completely out of the blue. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, pulling off my socks, and I looked up like, whoa. She smiled, but not in a playful way. It was like she was performing for an invisible camera. New? I asked. She glanced down at herself like she'd forgotten what she was wearing. Yeah, just something I got for girls' night. Girls' night, I echoed. She said, turning to the mirror. You know, wine, movies, selfies, whatever. Gotta look good for the gram, right? She laughed, but it didn't sound real. More like she was feeding me a line she'd rehearsed. That night, she went out around 9. Said she was meeting 2 friends I'd only met once. They were nice enough from what I remember. But she came home after midnight, hair slightly tousled, eyeliner a bit smudged. Not like she'd been drinking. More like she'd been active. She didn't kiss me goodnight. Just went straight to bed. I lay there next to her, eyes wide open, listening to her breathing steady out as she fell asleep. And all I could think was, something's broken, and I don't know when it happened. I started paying attention after that. To patterns, to habits, to everything she used to do and no longer did. She stopped stealing my hoodies, stopped asking about my editing projects, stopped teasing me about how I always narrate documentaries out loud when I think no one's listening. That used to drive her nuts. She used to roll her eyes and throw popcorn at me from the other couch cushion. Now she just stared through the screen, silent. The hardest part? She never seemed angry. Not exactly. Just checked out. Like she was already living in another chapter of her life. And I hadn't noticed she'd started turning the pages without me. And yet, whenever I tried to bring it up, whenever I tried to say, hey, are we okay? She'd flash that same tired smile. The one that didn't reach her eyes. We're fine, she'd say. Just a rough patch. But patches don't last this long. And they don't come with mystery flash drives. I tried not to think about the flash drive. Really, I did. The morning after Amber came home late and dropped that thing on my desk, I woke up determined to let it go. Told myself it was her job, her space, her boundaries. Whatever was on it probably was boring, financial summaries, slide decks, mood boards, whatever those ad agency folks toss around during strategy calls. But the way she said it, don't touch it. Not don't lose it. Not hey, make sure it gets backed up. No, it was a warning. One that sounded rehearsed. Like she'd practiced saying it before she even got out of the car. And the part that messed with me the most? She never mentioned it again. Not once. She had coffee the next morning, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, and left for work with her usual oversized tote slung over one shoulder. And that little silver flash drive? Still sitting exactly where she left it. Right on the corner of my desk, catching the morning light like it had something to say. I told myself I wouldn't look. For 2 hours I held out. I cleaned the kitchen. I did a load of laundry I didn't even need to do. I sat down at my laptop to finish editing a freelance project and ended up rereading the same paragraph 5 times without registering a single word. And then I cracked. It wasn't about the flash drive anymore. It was about everything that came before it. The yoga lie, the silent phone, the new lingerie, the long stares at nothing during dinner, like she was replaying something in her head, something I wasn't part of. I grabbed the drive, plugged it into my laptop. Nothing happened at first, just a pause. Then a single folder popped up, client_materials. Of course. I clicked. Inside was one lone video file. No title, no timestamp, just vid.mov. My heart thudded in my chest. I hovered my mouse over it, almost hoping the file would be corrupted. That it wouldn't open. That this was all just some innocent miscommunication and I was the idiot husband jumping to conclusions. But it opened. And everything changed. The screen lit up, a little shaky at first like someone had just set down the camera. The focus adjusted and then, there she was. Amber. On a bed I didn't recognize, in an apartment I'd never seen. She was wearing that same midnight blue lingerie, the one she said was for girls' night. And sitting beside her, laughing, smiling, touching her hair, was a man I didn't know. Mid-30s maybe, athletic build, tracksuit, handsy. They were close, too close. The way she looked at him, the way she laughed. It was soft, affectionate, familiar, not like two people just fooling around. Like people who'd done this before, people who planned for it. I couldn't move. The video kept going. Nothing explicit, at least not right away. But the int** Macy was undeniable. The kind of closeness that makes you feel like an outsider just watching it. And then it escalated. Touches turned to embraces. Embraces into kisses. His hand on her waist, hers on his chest. Her voice soft, delighted, completely free. And then came the worst part. As the screen dimmed to black at the end of the recording, a timestamp flashed in the corner. It was from 2 days ago. The same day she told me she'd spent the afternoon at a cafe with decent Wi-Fi to finish a report before her 5 p.m. check-in. I sat there, staring at the frozen screen, listening to the static hum from my speakers. My entire body felt cold. Not just chilled, empty. Like I just watched my marriage evaporate in real time. She hadn't just lied. She'd coordinated this, timed it, hid it, built an alibi. I yanked the flash drive out of the laptop so fast I nearly bent the connector. My breath was shallow. My hands were shaking. I stood up too fast and nearly tripped over the power cord under my desk. I paced the room like a madman, whispering to myself, "This isn't real. Can't be real. Maybe it's old. Maybe it's..." No. The lingerie. The timestamp. Her voice in the video saying something about making up for lost time. She planned it. She wanted it. I walked into the kitchen and gripped the edge of the counter, staring down at the granite like it might give me answers. Then I spun back to the living room. The flash drive was still in my hand, slick with sweat. I thought about smashing it, burning it, dropping it in the toilet and flushing the whole thing away. But I didn't. Instead, I hid it. In that moment, my brain went survival mode. I needed to breathe. I needed to get away from this house, from her things, from the smell of her perfume still clinging to the hallway. But more than anything, I needed to not be there when she came home. I ran upstairs, changed clothes like I was late for something, grabbed my wallet, phone, and keys, and left without a plan. The world outside was a blur. Trees, cars, mailboxes. I don't even remember turning on the ignition. I just drove. I must have gotten 20 miles out before I realized I wasn't going to any specific place. So I did what my gut told me. I drove to the old cabin. It's not really a cabin. It's more like a storage shack with electricity, left to me by my uncle years ago, tucked in the woods just east of Polsbo. I hadn't been there in ages. No Wi-Fi, no heat, just a cot and some dusty furniture. But it was quiet, secluded, and it didn't have her in it. I sat in the car for a long time before going inside. Her name lit up my phone 3 times. Then a 4th. Then a text. "You didn't open it, right?" No apology. No explanation. Just a question. Like she wasn't even worried about me, only about what I knew. That text said everything she couldn't. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was worried I saw it. That's when the anger took over. Hot and fast. It burned away the confusion and left only clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness like you see in bad TV shows. She wanted it. She built a whole other life around it, complete with secrets, scripts, and hiding spots. I set my phone down on the passenger seat, screen up, still buzzing every few minutes. I didn't answer, couldn't, because now I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt set up. I couldn't tell you how long I stayed at the cabin. Time didn't feel real up there. No clocks ticking. No emails pinging. Just the whisper of wind against the old cedar siding and the occasional rustle of deer or coyotes passing through the woods. I sat on the edge of the cot most of that first night, still wearing the same jeans and hoodie I left the house in, staring at the wall while the heater made that slow, rhythmic clicking sound. It was like my body had shut down everything but the basics. Heart beating, lungs working, eyes staring. My thoughts looped like a broken record. Her laughter in that video, her voice when she whispered something into his neck. The way she'd thrown the flash drive on my desk like it was nothing. Like I wouldn't care. It was more than cheating. It was more than the lie. It was the audacity of it. The performance. She looked me in the eyes, told me she loved me, kissed my cheek, and hours later, she was in bed with someone else, laughing, glowing. Not guilty. Not conflicted. Not even hiding it well. She had actually seemed happy. That realization broke something in me. I must have fallen asleep at some point because when I opened my eyes, sunlight was cutting through the dusty blinds and the air had that sharp morning cold. My phone had 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and more texts than I could scroll through without getting nauseous. Some were short. "Logan, please talk to me. I'm scared. We need to clear this up." And then the longer one where she finally admitted to something. "I didn't mean for you to see it. I needed you to understand. It's not just about him. It's about us. You've been so emotionally distant. You don't even see me anymore. I didn't know how to say it. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far." It was her version of a confession. A passive, self-serving one. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I turned my phone off and tossed it into the corner like it burned to hold it. That entire day, I barely moved. I watched trees sway through the window. I walked down to the small creek behind the cabin and threw rocks until my arm ached. I tried to eat something from the emergency food stash, some old trail mix and a protein bar, but my stomach turned before I could swallow. Everything was tainted. Every breath reminded me of her. And worse? I couldn't stop hearing her voice. By the second day, I'd started talking to myself, whispering things I'd say to her if I ever decided to go back. Imagining her reaction. Imagining her crying. And then imagining myself not flinching at her tears. It was a twisted comfort rehearsing a confrontation I didn't know if I'd ever have. But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I had to go back eventually. Bills. Work. My own damn life. And more than anything, I needed to get my documents. Passport, bank files, the kind of stuff you can't just leave behind. So I waited until I was calm-ish. Until the red-hot rage dulled into something quieter. Something colder. I left early before the sun was fully up. I didn't call her. Didn't warn her. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal. Our stupid ceramic gnome was still on the porch. The trash bin was still at the curb. The grass looked like she'd tried to mow it but gave up halfway through. But when I stepped inside, that's when it hit me. The smell of her perfume. The faint echo of a life I used to feel safe in. And then the sound, soft footsteps upstairs, then silence. She knew I was back. I didn't call her name. Just walked to the office and opened the filing cabinet. Half of my stuff was missing. I stood there, trying to breathe. Then I heard her voice from the stairs. "You came back," she said quietly. I turned. She was standing there in a robe, hair pulled up, no makeup. Like she just stepped out of a morning routine she wanted me to still feel part of. "I came to get my things," I said. My voice was hoarse. Dry. She nodded, stepping slowly into the room like I might bolt if she moved too fast. "Logan. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to be like this." I laughed. Loud, bitter, ugly. "You didn't want this?" I said. "You filmed it. You labeled it. You hid it in your makeup bag like a kid hiding candy. What did you expect to happen?" Her eyes welled up and she reached out. I stepped back. "I knew you'd look," she said, voice trembling. "That's why I left it out. God, I needed you to know. I was tired of pretending everything was okay." I stared at her, stunned. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. There wasn't an ounce of regret in her tone. Only frustration. Like I was the one dragging this out. Like I was the last one to get the joke. You could have just told me you weren't happy, I said. I tried, she snapped, her voice breaking. You never listened. You're always in your head, always shutting down when things get real. You think editing videos and going off-grid every time we fight is connection? It's not. It's avoidance. I was drowning. I bit down on my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Because the worst part? There was some truth in what she said. I had been drifting. I'd buried myself in side projects and home repairs. But not because I didn't love her. I did it because I thought we were okay. Because I thought that's what couples do, grind through the boring seasons until spring returns. But she didn't want spring. She wanted out. So you slept with someone else, I said flatly. She didn't respond. I nodded. Got it. I grabbed the last folder, zipped up my duffel bag, and turned to leave. Logan, please, she whispered. Don't go like this. I stopped at the door. Why? You already did. Then I walked out. She didn't follow. She didn't call. And that silence? That was the loudest part of all. The thing about betrayal is once you see it, you can't unsee it. It rewires something in you. Like a chemical spill in your bloodstream. No matter how much time passes, no matter how far you get from the source, it stains the way you see everything. Words don't mean what they used to. Smiles become suspicious. Even kindness feels like setup for a punchline you're not in on. After I walked out of the house with my duffel and my documents, I didn't go back to the cabin. I couldn't. It was too quiet now. Too much time alone meant too many mental reruns. So instead, I got a room at a cheap extended stay motel just outside of Port Orchard. Microwave, tiny coffee pot, scratchy sheets, nothing glamorous. But at least the walls didn't remember her voice. I didn't sleep much. Just lay there night after night, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles while her words looped in my head. You never listened. I needed you to know. But what kept me up the most wasn't the affair. It was the possibility, the horrifying possibility that she wanted me to find out. I kept going over it like some twisted detective. Why record it? Why label it so plainly? Why tell me not to open the drive and then leave it out like bait? And eventually, the awful answer came, maybe this was never about secrecy. Maybe this was about exposure. A few days later, I went back to the house. I needed some tools I'd forgotten in the garage. Figured I'd grab them while she was at work. Only she wasn't. I pulled up to the curb and saw her car still in the driveway. Curtains drawn. Lights off in the front window. My first instinct was to leave, circle the block, wait. But something told me to go in. I walked through the front door slowly, quietly, more a guest now than a husband. The air inside was stale. She must have closed the windows. Tried to seal out the ghosts. She was in the kitchen. Sitting at the table in a robe, hair unbrushed, a glass of something amber in front of her that wasn't coffee. She looked up like she'd been expecting me. Logan. I didn't answer. She gestured at the chair across from her. I stayed standing. You okay? She asked, like that was a normal question now. I'm here for my tools. She nodded. They're still in the garage. I didn't touch anything. She paused, swirling the glass in her hand. I meant what I said, you know. About being tired of pretending. I exhaled through my nose. Quiet. Controlled. So this was, what? Performance art. She winced. Don't do that. Do what? Try to make sense of how my wife used a flash drive to stage a slow-motion ambush on my entire sense of reality. Amber flinched again. But she didn't look guilty. Just irritated. God, you always do this, she muttered. Do what? Turn everything into a puzzle. A thesis. Like you're one step removed from feeling anything real. That hit harder than I wanted it to. And she saw it. See, she said, her tone sharper now. That's what I mean. You vanish, Logan. You vanish into yourself. Into your routines. Your editing. Your side projects. I was screaming and you were making spreadsheets. You could have told me, I said. I did, she snapped. I told you 100 times. In 100 ways. You just didn't listen. Or maybe you didn't care. I clenched my jaw. So that's your justification? You felt ignored so you decided to, what? Humiliate me? She didn't speak. That silence? That was my answer. I don't think you just wanted to get caught, I said, voice low now. I think you wanted to punish me. Her eyes flicked up and there it was something behind them. Something ugly. I wanted you to feel something, she said finally. I wanted you to wake up. I wanted to stop feeling like a ghost in my own house. My throat felt tight. I stepped back toward the hallway. I didn't come here for this. But I had to hear it. I had to see what was behind the mask. I saw the guy's face, I said. In the video. You smiled at him like he was the first real thing you'd touched in years. Amber's lips pressed into a hard line. She looked down. I'm not proud of it, she said quietly. But I'm not sorry either. I laughed cold and flat. That right there? I said. That's the most honest thing you've said since this started. She didn't deny it. I grabbed the keys off the counter and started to walk out, but before I could reach the door, she said something that made my blood freeze. I knew you'd open the drive, she whispered. I wanted you to. I needed you to know who I really was. I turned. Then congratulations, I said. Now I do. And then I left. This time, she didn't follow me. Didn't call. Didn't text. Because this time, she meant it. It was a week later when I got the message. My phone buzzed around noon, just as I was finishing a bowl of gas station ramen in the motel kitchenette. I didn't recognize the number, but the text said, Hey Logan, this is Zane. We've met. I used to train Amber. Used to. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over it for a full minute before I replied. What do you want? He answered almost immediately. Didn't know she was married. I think you should know what she told me. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to hear anything else. I was exhausted, worn down to the marrow. But curiosity no need won out. I told him to call. When the phone rang, I braced myself for bravado, for denial, for a bro-style apology I didn't ask for. But his voice surprised me. Calm, measured, maybe even regretful. I thought you were out of the picture, he said. She told me you were separated, that you scared her, that you were controlling. I had no idea she was still living with you. I feel sick. I let the silence stretch. She lied to both of us, I said eventually. Zane sighed. I should have seen it sooner. She was always selective with the truth. One day she said you were filing for divorce. The next she said you wouldn't let go. I leaned against the counter, a familiar dull anger rising in my throat. She didn't just cheat, I said. She manipulated everyone. Zane stayed quiet for a few beats, then said, I backed off the second I found out. We're done. I blocked her. I only reached out because I figured, you deserve to know. I didn't thank him. Couldn't. But I didn't hang up either. I appreciate the honesty, I said finally. Just take care of yourself, man. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the microwave door, pale, hollow-eyed. But beneath all of that, something else, something sharper. I wasn't just cheated on. I was used. Amber wanted me to watch that video, to break me, to set fire to what we had and stand back while I burned. And somehow, even after all of it, she still tried to spin it like my fault. But not anymore. This wasn't hers to narrate anymore. It was mine. I called a lawyer that afternoon, started the paperwork, told him I wanted everything filed, finalized, and fireproof. No drama, no stunts, just done. Amber tried reaching out again through mutual friends. Messages like, tell him I get it now. Please, just once. I need to explain. I ignored every single one. You don't owe closure to someone who chose confusion. You don't negotiate with someone who's still holding the matches. I moved into a small studio downtown. Concrete floors, tall windows, a tiny kitchenette that barely fit 2 pans. And it was perfect. I brought only what mattered. My tools, my laptop, a couple of worn-out hoodies, and a canvas I hadn't touched since Amber called my painting a waste of time. Turns out it wasn't. I painted almost every night. I'd lose hours smearing blues and reds and streaks of black onto thick paper, letting my hands say everything I didn't have words for. It wasn't therapy. It was survival. And slowly, that heavy, choking pain started to loosen its grip. I stopped checking her socials. Stopped asking friends if she mentioned me. Stopped letting her name echo through my head like a ghost that still had a key. Some days still hurt. Grief doesn't care about logic. But it changed form from a wildfire into a scar. One I could touch without flinching. One I could learn from. Months passed. One night, I stood in front of a nearly finished painting. A dark seascape with streaks of gold lightning splitting the sky, and realized I hadn't thought about Amber in hours. Not in the bitter way. Not in the grieving way. Just hadn't. And that was enough. I poured myself a drink, turned the record player on, and stood by the window watching the city breathe. I didn't have all the answers, but I had my name back. My peace. my voice, and the promise that I'd never again be someone's secret shame or silent sacrifice. Freedom, no matter how painful, is still better than being someone's toy.